Hey, you know what the clock is on the old time?
Yeah, I see.
Aren't these clocks are on some kind of computer control or not?
I October 12th, 21. I have to admit I didn't review these.
I've looked them over and I'll make a motion to approve.
Excellent. Second by Jane. Any changes or edits needed? All good? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Regular business is Stormwater Regulations. Let me just move that down. Chairman's report. I'm filling in for Eric this evening. The only thing to report on is the joint meeting with the planning board. We did have several items from planning board position that we did want to present. In the council, sorry, joint meeting with the planning board and town council. We did have several items that we wanted to report on at that meeting and discuss with the council. Unfortunately, due to time, with the first item, which was the presentation by the town's economic development consultant, Stu Arnett, that pretty much ate up all the time. So that was a review and of the presentation that was done last year, a year ago.
Yeah,
and,
it was an identical presentation.
With a couple of slides were updated towards the end. But basically, for Bill, you were not there, or members of the public, they were really talking about the 3 gateways to town, the north corridor on 108, the south corridor coming into town, more along the railroad tracks area, New Road, as well as Ash Swamp Road, and then the current B3 zone out on Route 152, and then different types of potential economic development opportunities for the town in those 3 areas. We talked a little bit about maybe prioritizing some of the areas which would be considered maybe low-hanging fruit, such as the Route 108 North Corridor, which we had presented to the council several years back to extend the M2a zone to that area as well, as in addition to what was adopted from the railroad tracks, past the car wash. So I think that could be something that the planning board could start to pursue. There was a lot of work that was already done on that, by Diane and by the committee, the working group that worked on that. The biggest thing that has changed up there is the state project was all completed, and the town has upgraded, obviously, all of the water, sewer, and drainage infrastructure. So, that area is very much ready to go as far as any rezoning per the recommendations of the Economic Development Committee, and how we may want to, or the Economic Development Advisor, and how the planning board may want to utilize that to revisit and maybe push forward not just the current M2a zoning to expand there, but also revisit the M2a zoning. Diane has some good ideas about that as far as some potential changes to improve on that. Now, especially now that we've been through 2 applications, and we've had that now for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, it's been, yeah, it's been at least that.
We haven't really seen any development yet. We're hopeful that this last project we just approved can get moving forward, but we know that there's areas to improve within that current ordinance.
And we do have some development interest in that area.
Oh, excellent.
We did meet with the architect who represented the owner of Pazek Investors. We met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're interested in moving forward with some kind of mixed use.
Great.
With some residential, some opportunities for rental housing for millenniums in that age group, and possibly some mixed use commercial on the lower floors and residential upstairs towards the front of the property, and then some housing opportunities sort of on a cluster concept in the rear. So that's what they were talking about generally. So they're going to
consistent with what we have in the M2a now.
Correct. However, as you know, in the B1 zone, which it is zoned now, you can't do any residential.
Yeah, their concept is consistent.
Right. So we talked to them about the possibility of maybe going forward with some zoning changes, but with the planning board, I think they were anxious to get some indication right away, and they said, well, we might even go to the zoning board,
Okay.
which they certainly have that option.
Absolutely.
But they seemed like they were poised, if you will, for development and moving forward. I mean, that's been dormant now since 2008.
Okay.
So that's an encouraging sign.
So maybe as an action item for the board, we could all take a re-review of M2A, and maybe Diane, if you have any time, you could draft maybe just a memo to the members
Sure.
as to suggested changes.
Yeah.
And then we could kind of at least get that on the agenda item to start discussing that. The other thing that came out of that was some, I think, more interest in revisiting the ADUs
Mhm.
and trying to create some more housing opportunities within the town, and to be looking at revisiting ADUs as the ability to have a detached ADU.
Mhm.
And I think that was also
Right.
discussed at the council after our
Yeah.
meeting.
Right,
Okay.
and we
And-
unanimously agreed to have, Tony send a letter, to the planning board asking them to
Great.
review it.
Okay, so those,
And that hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
but Steve told me that the board was
Why does
interested.
council want detached units?
The thing that they're interested in is, to create a better mix of, housing stock within the town. That, the detached, ADU could offer, say, lower rent, opportunities for, graduate students or things like that. Yeah,
You say graduate students because it sounds better than students?
well, yeah,
well, it could be.
when I was a
multiple
student, no,
generations.
you couldn't afford, that kind of stuff. I guess now they have luxury condos. No, but work housing,
Workforce
things.
housing.
But anyway, I think that we should take it revisited again, especially with what's going on with, it would be good, because it was also part of our housing chapter on the master plan, that as far as revisiting the diversity of the housing stock in the town, especially because as we're getting so built out as a town, the vacancy rates are pretty much nil right now in town. We are hearing from business owners that their employees can't find housing in Newmarket, employers.
I've personally
So
been
it's-
places
well,
where people are just.
We may not fix it, Bill, but I think it's worth looking at our, looking from our master plan to revisit the housing and zoning by zones. We have very.
But we
some of the
already
zones,
have.
for instance, you go from, an R1 and an R2, they're pretty identical as far as their housing, uses that are permitted, yet they're two strictly different zones, They're both single families. There's no transition from a high density one coming to an R2 then to an R1. So, you can look at ADUs from all different aspects, as far as detached being, a percentage of build out of a lot. So therefore, you're having to maintain a certain amount of, pervious area on the lot. But let's
Well,
put
just
it-
to be clear, the town council is asking the planning board to look at it and make a recommendation. It's not to go do it, right?
Right.
Well,
And we already have ADUs in the town. It has to be physically touching the
Attached.
building.
Yeah, it was state mandated, you shall have ADUs. You don't have a
Correct.
choice.
you have to, but
Yeah.
there's different options that the state law
Yeah.
offers.
And the other thing that's happening in the town is many people are just going to the zoning board and basically getting variance for detached ADU. So it's not like it's not happening. But they aren't necessarily.
They haven't issued many. They've actually turned down a couple in my tenure here with the town. So-
in relative to how many they've approved. Yeah.
They've turned down 3, but, people don't
Yeah.
go because they know that it's not an allowed use. But there were, the 3 that I'm thinking about, we're all in neighborhoods with fairly large lots, and the impacts would have been minimal. And, there were some of us who felt that it really wouldn't have been a problem, so that, we could come up with some regulations, some guidelines, so that we could, make that an option without impacting on existing neighborhoods that might be overcrowded.
So let's just put that on our next agenda item for the board to consider if we want to, as a board, move that forward and look at the housing master plan that has already been adopted. And what we want to do either with permitted residential uses in the existing zones and or, revisiting the ADUs. And then just, let's discuss it as a board and figure out where the majority's weighing in if we're gonna move forward on any of that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, is there a lesson learned, sorry, I should.
No, go ahead.
Is there a lesson learned on that we kinda had a repeat, session with the town council that we had a year ago? So should we propose an agenda prior to those so we can control the conversation a little bit and maybe move forward?
There was an agenda.
Okay,
There wasn't a time limit on the agenda.
gotcha.
And even though there was a time limit on the presentation, it just. I think the other lesson learned is, and that, and I talked to Tony about this, is that the timing of the meeting, because by the time anything really happens, then there's a new council that's voted in March. So maybe the joint
Should
meeting
be-
is in May.
Yeah.
And then it's
Oh, yeah,
really
that's a good
giving
idea.
several months for the two boards, who are the working boards for the next 8 months, to move, projects forward, if you will. So
Good
I
point.
think that would be better too. I think, so that, I did talk to Tony about that.
Good.
Okay, anything else from that meeting that you can think of, Scott?
No, the people on town council really liked the meeting, but I don't know, I agree with you, we didn't cover very much, but I think they were all, they were all fairly new, right?
I
And
think
so,
for some of them, it's the first time they
Yeah.
heard the presentation.
yeah, or seen the planning board people,
It's true.
It was the
Yeah.
first time I had met a lot of the new councilors.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. Anything else, Scott, from the town council perspective to report? I'm jumping right into committee
No,
reports.
because that was the
That
big
was it. Okay.
discussion we had.
Jane, here, CIP Health Ministry. Yep,
Yes, didn't you get a
Yeah.
copy? Would you like a copy?
I would like a copy. Bill?
Okay.
You're-
We have some
you don't have that
copies.
either. Okay. All right, so, Diane, anything to report other than that potential interest of developers?
We can talk about the stormwater
No, we'll-
regulations
I'm gonna do
at
that
a
after
later
the-
point, but, no, I'm all set at this point,
Okay.
thank you.
So we don't have Rob Graham here, but we do have it on the agenda, willing to hear from the, member of the public who came to speak.
Okay. My name is
Oh,
Beverly.
I'm sorry, you have to come to the mic, and we do need your name and, address for the minutes.
Hi, I'm Beverly Potter. I live at 3 Stanholm Drive in Newmarket here. And I had formally filed a citizen's complaint about some safety concerns at lots 6 and 7 of the industrial park, where Forbes Road and 108 meet, and Stanholm Drive goes off of Forbes. Whereas there were many near instances of vehicle crashes because we could not see around the corner due to the overgrowth of bushes and trees. And also there were significant mounds of dirt and sand and rocks that was not only dusting all of us, it was also just an eyesore, I think, to the town. So I do thank Diane very much for responding to me, and I'm here to report that the progress has been significant.
Hmm.
I am
That's good.
truly impressed. I never thought it would be this good.
That's like to hear.
Yeah.
They have really set it up so that if they're looking for an investor or a buyer, it should be a good progress from here, and I was hoping to hear from Rob about that. And I wanted to give kudos to the operator of the very large machinery. He did a remarkable job and is a truly talented backhoe and everything that was going on. So I just wanted to say thank you, Diane, for pushing that forward.
Certainly, my pleasure.
And it's certainly amazed.
It has made a big difference. I understand they actually moved that big pile.
Yes, they did.
So that's no longer an eyesore in your backyard.
That's right.
And
Yes.
I was told that Severino was going to be finished by the end of this year, and that they'll be going into the next phase where they're going to be preparing sites for development. And I was hoping Rob would be here tonight so he could give you an update on that.
Yeah.
Finally, it's moving forward. It's been a long haul for a lot of people.
Yes, it has. There's a lot of, they've done a lot with the drainage.
Yeah.
That was an issue. There were concerns that there'd be ice problems come winter. Now, they're not. They put rocks all up along the edge, all of going down to the industrial park, all of the massive amount of dirt, sand.
Yes, sand.
Has been crushed and is now in piles, and I understand one of the piles is already being trucked out
Good.
someplace. So
Good.
I just say thank you.
Okay.
that's-
Well, you're.
We
you're
appreciate
certainly-
your attention to it
Yeah.
as well. I mean, obviously, as a town, we're very short-staffed on compliance issues as far as, having the code, the building official go out to ensure that the conditions of the approvals that we granted are being met. And so we need people who are like right there in the backyard to be watching and reporting in. It's very
Thank you.
helpful.
Yeah. And Underwood Engineers has been monitoring the work out there as well, has been sort of acting as a liaison with the contractors, representative and Mr. Graham, and helping to keep tabs on the project. There was some erosion that occurred after the major rainstorms we had, and they were right out there the next day working on,
Yes.
reshaping the drainage swales and trying to get the vegetation to take. So, and it's slowly coming along, and they've been very pleased with the progress they've made in that
Yes.
on
they
that
should.
basis. So I'm disappointed Rob's not here tonight, because I wanted to hear his schedule and how soon he might be back before us for,
Where are they relative to vesting rights?
They're
schedule-wise?
vested under the original approval, and the reason for that is because they finished all the road improvements in the public right-of-way for Route 108.
I thought we tied in, the excavation work had to be done by a
It
certain
was,
period.
there was, or the building of the buildings, and I can share that with you. I have the file in my office, I can bring
No,
that
because
to you.
I'm just,
But they're vested, I checked that yesterday. We are holding a $180,000 bond.
so they didn't have to remove all the material to have build-ready sites?
No.
As
Well,
part of that?
no, it was either or. And I can,
Or.
it was either the completion of all the off-site improvements that they made, and, or that.
All right.
And I checked it yesterday, and I can give you a copy of it. And as you know, he came into the planning board and discussed that
Yes,
at a
okay.
special meeting to get that resolved.
It certainly would be nice to hear any updates.
Yeah.
that-
Well, I'd like to know when we're gonna have some tenants out there. There is another project going on in the industrial park that's moving along very quickly and expeditiously.
Very.
The Procentrics project, and they're hoping to be done by, they're saying the first of the year, but we're thinking maybe it might be March or
That's
so.
the new building going up there?
That's the new building that's going up, and they've been very responsive as well. So it's nice to see some activity, in the industrial
Yes, it
park,
is.
and this could hopefully bring some new jobs to the town.
I hope
and,
so. And they did
economic
a marvelous
revenue.
job themselves with the landscaping and piping and drainage and everything like that. Certainly has upgraded the land down there, so that looks good.
Good.
Great. Ms. Carter, thank you very much. We appreciate you
Yes,
coming.
thank you
and
for
your time.
coming, Beverly.
Okay, so, we have stormwater regulations. Diane, why don't you just give an overview? This is gonna
Yeah.
actually be moved to an agenda item as a workshop item at the
Thank you.
December meeting.
Yes, December,
We're not gonna get into it.
December
so
14th. And
December 14th.
And I wanted to get the package out to you. There's a long history to this project. We started it in December 2017. The town received a grant from DES, and we worked for 7 or 8 months with Carl Parmento, who actually did a great job coordinating the first phase of it. And we had a subcommittee, and Bill, I think you might have been on that. Val was appointed an alternate, and some of the other members are no longer on the planning board. But we made quite a bit of progress, and we were using the 2012 Stormwater Regulation. There's a model that was put out by the Southeast Watershed Alliance, which was a committee that was set up through the state legislature to get coastal communities to work together collaboratively to come up with regulations that were consistent and were not in conflict with one another. And so they put together this draft ordinance back in 2012, and that was for many communities what they were using as the model. Subsequently they put out a 2017 draft, and we worked under that as well, thinking, gee, we're getting ahead of the curve here, this is great. And so we were moving along expeditiously, and all of a sudden there was a lawsuit that came, and we've talked about it. It was a group of municipalities here in New Hampshire. Newmarket was one of them, challenging the terms of the EPA New Hampshire MS4 program. And of course that is a license or a discharge permit that the town has legal obligations under. And so that sort of brought our process to a halt because we didn't know what kind of changes that they were entertaining. And at the end of the day, it took a couple of years because they had to go through the Federal Register process and have proper postings and notices, et cetera, et cetera. And finally in 2020, EPA came out with a new permit, an amendment to the permit. In January 2021 is when it actually went into effect. And of course, lo and behold, that's right at the heels of the pandemic. And also the money ran out for the grant. So everything was in limbo for a long time and on hold. I have been working closely with Bill Archeri, and some of you know Bill. He's a senior scientist, wetlands, water resource scientist. He works with VHB, Vanessa Hangen. He's been providing pro bono services to the town and has been helping us sort through some of this. He's been tracking this program since it began, so he has a really good perspective. And he has also worked with communities that have updated their regulations. And back in 2010, he was our consultant when we got the original stormwater regulations on the books, of which I think Eric Bodeman was on that committee at the time as well. So anyway, so here we are. I have been working with Bill to bring everything into compliance with the modified permit, which is stating that no, we're not going to use the 2017 model, which was only a draft. We're going to go back and use the 2012 model. And I have a copy of those regulations here that I have gone through section by section and have I took the draft that we were left with in January 2018, was it? In front of me here, 2019. And I reworked it, including all the information. So everything that's in there now meets those minimum requirements, which is what we're legally required to have on the books. And they're really no different than some of the programs that are already ongoing, such as the alteration of terrain programs, which is run by the state. So I've had Bill look at I've drafted I did the first cut, and I had Bill look at them, and there were a couple of areas where we had to do some tweaking, and he felt that, yeah, we're ready to go forward with these at this point. So I'm hoping we can start that process. We promised, the committee promised way back that we would come back to the planning board and have a work session and answer technical questions and so forth before we were ready to present them for public hearings. So I guess that's where we are. And Bill has agreed to come on and help us out with that, which I was very grateful to him for offering to do that. And so he's agreed to come to the meeting on December 14th. And in the interim, if everybody could take a look at what we have and, put your questions together. A lot of this information is very technical, but it's stuff that's already on the books at the Department of Environmental Services. And the engineers in the area are pretty familiar with the protocols under that program. So it's really nothing really that new, just some, housekeeping type things, including having inspections, having a code enforcement program, and having recording of the stormwater documents, so, we'll be in a good position to enforce them going forward. So,
Does it,
go ahead.
just a quick question. Does it match the requirements that the town is mandated under the MS4?
Yes.
So
That's-
we're not asking for any, private landowners to have to do anything that the town isn't required to do. In
Well,
regards to
Development.
development and drainage and infrastructure and things like that.
Right, and there is a component where, the municipal public buildings and grounds need to be in compliance, and the town needs to come up with some best management practices to address those. That's not until, this is a 5-year program,
But the
but yes, the
proposal matches what the town will be required to do. The draft.
to the extent that it applies. I mean, this is regulating private development.
Correct.
And the
Yes.
town's not,
The town's not
The-
subject to our regulations. I think more the question was, is the town going to be operating under the similar regulations or less stringent regulations?
there is a whole section in the permit for municipal and public facilities, and it's a different, things like you have to have a spill prevention plan. When a developer puts a commercial project together, they have to have that. The town has to have that for the public works facilities. That's one example that comes to mind.
So they're consistent.
They're consistent, right?
Well, the big thing for the town is they measure the nitrogen coming into the lamprey, and they measure the nitrogen going out of the lamprey, and we get so much nitrogen, that we can add, right? And my understanding is a huge component of that is stormwater.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That's right, Scott. And yes, the town will have to put in some facilities at some point to address its own stormwater on public properties.
Right.
And yes, nitrogen is a major issue for Great Bay, and the largest contributor is stormwater.
Yeah.
I think it's 75%. And of course, we're at the mouth of the river. But
Yeah.
we have to deal also with the impacts upstream. So this will provide some
Well, the
measures to
EPA
the
though
town.
is every town upstream is also under the same.
That- No, it's based on urbanized areas. This is our
okay.
map. I think I gave you all a copy of it. And any community that is part of a statistical metropolitan area, of which Newmarket became one in 2010 after the census was completed, is required to be part of the program. It does not include all of the communities in Stratford County, but it does include many of the seacoast communities and larger cities, Dover, Portsmouth, Rochester, Somersworth,
Yeah.
Exeter. But the small towns are not part of it, but, we've been told that in the future they very well may be, and we'll have to follow suit. And of course, a lot of those communities are on septic systems, and, they don't have a direct means to control the nitrogen as we do with our wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
Yeah, so to answer your
So-
question, not all the towns that are upstream, that are on the Lamprey River or the Piscasset are included under.
Yeah, I didn't understand
Right.
that. I thought the EPA said everybody is in.
No.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
map also, just in the lavender color, it's not the entire town, but our stormwater regulations apply to the entire town, so that's how
Yeah.
they're written. But we had to map as part of our obligations, storm outfalls that could be potential contributors of pollution. And then this year, going into the 4th year of the program, it's hard to believe it's been 4 years, we need to actually go out and start identifying priority outfalls and doing water quality sampling and laboratory analysis and so forth to
Yeah.
be able to confirm that these areas are.
Clean water is really expensive.
And then the next step is, okay, now that you know what your priorities are, what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah,
And that's where the real hardcore environmental engineering will come into play, and we'll need to, address that. And hopefully we can do some of it through our development review process, so the cost doesn't fully fall on the shoulders of the
Yeah.
town.
now, I thought it was
Under
interesting, Sean thought that rain was actually a significant contributor.
Rain? Yeah,
Rain, yeah,
acid
that
rain.
apparently there's a lot of nitrogen in the air, not N2, but, NOH or
In-
something, and the rain gathers it and brings it down into the water.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
Yeah.
The
contributing to
rain
the
gathers
pollution
the
problem.
fertilizers that run into the road or run off the lawn.
Well, that's stormwater. He's talking literally rain in the Great Bay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in any event, this is being moved to the workshop on
Yeah.
December 14th. Thank you for providing that overview.
Okay, and I will have
And-
Bill here, and maybe I'm trying to see if Kyle might be able to come back and help us, since he started the process with us, and he's been working on this with other communities, so that's kind of in the works at this point. But,
I think it might be better for the workshop meeting to be the planning board with Bill, and then let members come up with a list of questions. Right? So
Mhm.
that, number one, we don't know what else is gonna be on our agenda. But, when we do wanna start moving some of these we just put 2 other items on the agenda as well.
right,
But I think that, having, more time for the members to actually review this, and then having you and Bill kind of do your presentation on what's different from what we have now, and, where we're going with this, and then let the members go back to be able to figure out, well, what are the questions,
right.
and then
What-
come back to another meeting, and then we can talk about public hearings.
We had a very in-depth session in February 2017 with the planning board.
Yep.
And I put together a list of four or 5 pages of all the questions that came up. So, I'm sure the same questions are gonna come up this time as well. So
Maybe
we
it's-
can work from that as sort of a Q&A
Yeah.
to help
Yeah,
streamline the process some.
because also this has gone back to the 2012, not 2017.
Right, but the differences aren't.
Okay. All right, that would be good, and I know
Yep.
Eric was looking for something else, but, all right, so that will move to December 14th as a workshop, so if we could just kind of put that towards the end.
We also have the, I'm sorry,
Go
Valerie.
ahead.
The gravel pit is up for every 3 years they have to
Yeah.
come in and do a
So they're on the
presentation,
agenda?
so they'll be on the agenda. I just
Okay.
heard from the new owner of the Roosevelt,
Very good.
the gravel pit. So that's gonna be coming up in December, and I believe there's gonna be an application from the folks who wanted to do the pool installation. They came before us.
Yep.
Up on Route 152 in the
Oh, right.
B3
yeah.
zone about a year and a half
Pool
ago.
liner or something like
They're
that.
working on it. I guess it's been a slower process than they anticipated. But everybody is really busy these days, and they're right out straight, so.
Yeah, I drive by it all the time. I've
they
never
wanted
seen
to do
anything going on.
storage. That was part of their deal.
Right.
And so they asked about parking equipment there, but I don't see any equipment there.
Yeah, they asked if they could park some of their
Yeah.
equipment at that location. And we said yes, so long as they didn't.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they,
but they were also wanting to rent storage space, that they didn't,
Right.
they did not qualify, they didn't come before us with a site plan that was, approved by the,
No.
by the board.
Yeah.
They came before us with a conceptual plan, and they're working with what is now Tie and Bond. I guess they're still called Tie and Bond
Alright, so that,
Okay.
we'll see that.
engineers.
Any other business at this point? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Thank you, Bill.
Second by Jane. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.